And look who's back.
Oh,
Tom,
what's up, everybody?
we missed you.
He's all quiet.
He is. He's all like
All right.
5 seconds ago, he was all raw.
Right.
Frankie, you haven't been back.
Yeah.
There he
Been a
is.
while.
This is great.
Is
Yeah.
it? Well, welcome back. Welcome back.
Thank you. It's an honor.
So it's the guy show today. I'm going to be quiet. I'm not going to interrupt.
What?
Yeah.
now that I don't have anything to say,
You're going to have lots to say. I think you were. Solomon, how are you?
I am great. How are you guys?
I like your new feature. I could already see it.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, you'll see me looking up more.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a worthwhile investment.
I like it. Everybody's New Year's was good, safe, healthy.
Yeah.
I don't know about healthy. I mean,
Were you sick?
no, but I was drinking a whole lot. That's not being
That's a lot
healthy.
of calories.
Oh, well, yeah, a lot of calories, a lot of damage to the liver.
Did you work out? Did you work it out and burn it off?
A couple days later.
That's how it works.
How was your New Year's? Good?
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was
Good.
definitely great.
Yeah, what have you been up to since, you know?
Yeah.
What have I been up to?
Yeah.
How's the paint shop coming?
It's actually doing great.
Good.
It's a little tricky. It's winter season. It's like the hardest season for all blue collar workers.
Mhm.
And so it's staying afloat, and we're just kind of deciding what direction we're going to take moving forward going into this year. And so I'm gonna sit down with my business partner. We're gonna come up with a plan, see what's gonna be the best option for us. But outside of that, painting services, like actually painting houses, have been up and going even during these times. But the store has been a little slow though, for sure.
How's it? And where's it at again in Long Beach, right?
Yeah, off of Willow and Magnolia.
All right. Got it. So
Mhm.
if you guys need to buy paint, come to Long Beach.
Rivers of paint.
And you paint inside and outside of houses?
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Got your hustle on.
We may need to talk.
Nice.
Started painting when I was 20.
Really?
And now I'm 26.
Been doing it for 6 years.
I have.
Nice. Solomon, your New Year's was good?
Yeah, it was. I'm trying to remember what I did.
He was drinking too.
Yeah, I might as well have been. I
can't
don't
even
remember what I was doing, but yeah, it was fine.
Me and Grandma partied till about a whole 8 o'clock.
Mm.
And then that was it.
And then you both went to bed.
Oh, we were done. Me and the dog. Well, I stayed up a little bit, but the dogs were shaking the fireworks.
Oh,
And normally they don't, but they did this time. All right, so let's get into this. Quick question.
Sure.
You don't have to tell us anything too personal, but have you, since the show last, dating, anything interesting like that?
Anything current?
Yeah.
I'll say something has sparked, So still beginning process,
Good. It'll fit
still,
in with this topic then.
still a little curious about things. But yeah, things are kind of semi going pretty well. So
Good. Okay.
we'll see where things go moving forward.
You ready, Tom?
I guess.
So, us old folks over here who've been around the block and done the thing, married, divorced, kids, we brought a youngster because he has not been married. He has no children. So when I was thinking of this topic about triggers and boundaries, I think it's different for younger people
Totally different.
than it would be for us older people, because a lot of my friends have a lot of triggers, I have a lot of boundaries. Everybody says I have too many boundaries because we're older now, so we put in that time, right? So I wanted to see the young versus the new, I guess. Like,
Sure.
now that with you're younger, when you meet a girl, you would think or hope she doesn't have a lot of triggers. But the one thing I've learned is, I don't know if it's TikTok, I don't know if it's just people, but that's like the thing now. Like, oh, that's my trigger. Oh, that's my trigger. In our day, it was get the F over it.
Right.
yeah.
That's exactly what I was thinking about on my way over here, for sure. The differences.
So now that everybody has these triggers, when you date somebody, how soon should the triggers come out? How soon did somebody place boundaries? And when they tell you that, like, for me, if you have a childhood trigger from a parent or something that happened, I don't know if those ever go away. So those are something should be discussed, right?
Yeah.
But if she just got out of a relationship and she was dating some guy and he had all this negative that came with him, they now become her triggers that she's now brought into the new relationship. How do you guys deal with that? Or do you deal with that? Or do you tell her to get over it? Go get some therapy.
It's an interesting thing because I think triggers could come instantly. It could even be off the first sentence, you know? And so you could instantly pull the trigger on a girl, and they could get instantly backlash. They could respond, they get defensive. And even I personally have my own, you can say, triggers as well. But how mature, how aware, how much discernment and wisdom do you have to understand to place boundaries? A lot of people don't even understand where all these emotions are coming from in the first place. So once you understand more about yourself, then you can start establishing boundaries. But where does maturity and these things and learning from these experiences and these lessons, you know, a lot of people don't even get the opportunity to understand that itself. So it is case by case. So
And I think the younger you are, the more uncontrolled your emotions are, especially in women. Like we're
Sure,
young,
yeah.
we have our whole hormonal monthly thing that comes, right? And when we're young, I know you guys don't believe this or anything, but that is such an emotional time for us. We don't know how to control it. We're hot, we're cold, we're crying, so we don't even know how to control any of our emotions. I would say I personally didn't learn how to control my actual emotions till I was like probably 35. Like if something made me mad or I cried, something hurt my feelings. Like now at 50, I've pretty much mastered them, but I don't think I even started to realize to try to control my emotions till I was like, I wouldn't even say 30, 35 maybe.
Right.
So I know we do a lot of things. Like you said, the very first date can be, but that's why I asked you because you're younger. Like, Tom, if you went out on a date and that first night she's like, well, you can't do this, you can't do that because that triggers me. And da 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 da. Like, we're older now. So there's going to be women that are going to have these things from their exes, you know? How well do you deal with that? Or like, you just roll your eyes.
Well, I don't know.
Like,
Yeah,
do
if she's
you
gonna
have
place all
triggers?
this, I'm sure I do. I'm off the top of my head. Do I know what they are? No, not necessarily, but I'm sure I have triggers. Um, but yeah, if he's gonna put all these, things on me because of her triggers, because of her ex, like I think I'd be like, first of all, I'm not him, you know.
Yeah.
So you've been abused, you've been this, you think I'm talking down to you, just having a conversation, and you
Yeah.
take it wrong, like, I don't put that off on me,
Yeah.
Like I didn't do it to you, but
I didn't think I had too many triggers per se, but when Solomon and I were talking about this topic during the week, I said, well, one of my triggers is, for me, it's definitely a trigger. It's because the monster under my bed when I was a kid, I don't think that children should be around adult conversations when it comes to per se sex.
right.
So I dated this guy for like about a month and a half, and we went to this place where everybody was drinking and met a bunch of his friends there. And I didn't really know his friends. And one of the guys brought his two kids. And I think the little girl was like 12 or 13. So the boy was 14 or 15. And it seemed pretty cool. Everyone's drinking. I wasn't drinking because I don't drink too much. And then they start playing this game. It's like Cards with Humanity. It wasn't that, but it was something similar to that. And it was fine until there was a sex question. And it wasn't just a normal sex question. It was like an anal sex question.
Whoa.
And they're all laughing. And the little girl's face was so like embarrassed. And she looked at her brother and they were both embarrassed. Well, I was livid. Like that stuff should not be talked about in front of kids. So I got up and walked away. I think I called my sister to say like, am I the weirdo? Like, is this not? She kind of calmed me down. So I went back and sat down. He's like, let's leave. And I was like, oh, he's like on my side. Like, let's leave. So when we left and got in the car, oh yeah, no, I was so wrong. We got in a big old fight, but I'm not okay with talking about sex in front of kids.
Wait, are you saying he didn't leave because you were offended?
Oh no, he left and we got in the car and boy, I was about to pull a Rihanna and Chris Brown and whoop his ass. But I just bit my tongue till we got to his house where my car was, got in my car and drove off and was like, I'm good. Like,
wow.
no, he was like, how dare you embarrass me in front of my friends?
Oh.
But
Oh,
he
wow.
couldn't
The opposite.
comprehend you don't talk, for me, you don't talk about sex in front of kids. That's like a trigger for me. Like, that's not okay. But then remember I explained to you, and then Solomon said, I don't think that's a trigger. I think that's normal. Like, you shouldn't do that, but it happens.
Yeah, now that I think about it, I mean, it can be both, right? So to me, when you say trigger, a trigger is something where it's a normal action to most people, but to you, for some reason, it bothers you, right? So that's when people say trigger. And the funny thing is, when we start talking about younger people, right? You would think that they would have fewer triggers, but because of the proliferation of social media, where everybody gets, everything gets intensified, and you see these things over and over again, it just seems like everybody's triggered. Like people make up triggers. It's sort of like, how people are all of a sudden now everyone's OCD and all of this, and they make up these triggers, and they've been reinforced with social media to say it's okay for me to feel this way and for me to have these triggers.
Yeah.
And then the worst part is everybody else should respect that. And I think that's where we have the issue.
Yeah, I don't think that the one thing I know that I don't want to deal with is any issues you have from an ex. You have to, like, we could talk about it, but you could say, hey, like, this is how she made me feel when we were together, or this or that. But that's about it. Like, at that point, we need to move forward. Like, I'm not her. You're not him. I'm not going to compare you to him. Or, maybe he cooked meat a certain way and I didn't like it, and now you cook it the same way. I'm not going to turn around and say.
So what do you think would be more morally right rather than your own personal, we could say, triggers? So where's like the kind of the fine line where you kind of see between the two?
So in that particular
Because you were
incident that night,
yeah, because you were talking about this little story that you just brought up. So I guess I would see that as morally right.
that's what I would say. But apparently, no, because everybody, when I got up and walked out, everyone's like, oh my God, I can't believe she's mad. Like, who cares? They kept playing the game. Like, but I looked at these kids like the little girl should not even hear that stuff or know about that stuff, let alone from her dad and his friends. So because for me, you're telling her, well, when you go with your friends can now talk like that to you.
Yeah.
And your friends can talk about stuff like that in front of you. Well, she's 13. No, she should not be. So for me, that's definitely a boundary. It's definitely
a boundary.
It's definitely a trigger. I don't have the boundaries I have, I guess, would always say they always come to the protection of children, right? Like that's me and my friends want to go out and act stupid and get stupid and something happens, that's on us, right? Yeah. But like I was saying earlier, my boundary is like my house is my safe haven. There's only so many people, certain people that are invited to my house. If I'm dating somebody, and which happened a lot, like when I was really young, if the guy wants to come in the middle of the night and scream and shout and cry, like back then we were so young, but today, that can never happen. Like that's not.
Yeah.
I think we obviously have to excuse the triggers of like we talked about before. Oh, that was the sound he made before he would beat my ass or something like that. I mean, those are things that you might have to forgive, with people, but
Well, and that is a huge thing. Like when you're dating somebody and they did have, they come from like a domestic violent, relationship, and not even just domestic violence, because men and women, so it goes both ways, are very verbally abusive, very mentally abusive. I don't feel like the more I talk to people, the more I feel like I'm the oddball, because I would never look at my significant other, the man that I'm intimate with, and tell him to shut the F up.
Right.
Like, no, that doesn't. And again, when I was younger, I did and said stupid things, right? Like, again, as I've healed and as I told you earlier, the more I talk to God, the more I know, like, that's not how it is. But people are very emotional, mentally. They have all these triggers when they get out of that type of a relationship. So that's why I said those conversations need to be had. Like they need to come to you and say, hey, my ex-husband did this, this, and this. You got to I think you kind of have to walk on eggshells in the beginning. For sure. For her to trust you, right? For her to know, okay, he's not going to hit me. He's not going to tell me I'm stupid. He's not going to yell at me. But I think what you said, Solomon, is the more and more we see stuff on social media.
Yeah.
There's not that fine line of like, okay, that guy was a piece of shit. I dated him. It didn't work out. We had arguments. Let me just put it aside and keep moving forward.
I think the other thing too is people won't always know when those triggers happen, right? Or you won't even know that a certain thing triggers you until it does.
For
And
sure.
so I don't know if it's always going to be reasonable to say, hey, let's have a conversation about this because you don't know what's going to happen. I might slam the door one day and
Yeah.
that's, what happened every time before he was going to storm in drunk or whatever.
Mhm.
And she won't know until you actually do it. And so, or vice versa. But yeah, the stuff you do know, right? And I think it's also important that we differentiate these kinds of things, these lifelong, like really intense triggers versus, some kids on social media are saying, "Oh, I'm triggered whenever someone,
Mhm.
calls my name in a certain way or whatever." These temporary type things. I think it's two different things, and those are things that probably will go away, but these are also things that may not go away without, some intense counseling.
Mhm.
Well, yeah,
Fair
and
point.
it is intense counseling, but that's another thing too, is there's so much therapy out there and people will say, "Oh, I'm going to therapy and I'm working on myself." But are you really working on yourself? Because if you're
Mhm.
still being triggered, if you still have to place like I think when you come out of a really bad relationship, you have to place boundaries within yourself. And
Yeah.
the biggest boundary is maybe not date until you're
So true.
healed. Maybe stay single for a while.
Yeah.
Maybe learn to live by yourself and to be okay by yourself
Yeah.
until you can move forward into the next relationship.
Yeah, that was
Yeah.
kind of a point that I was gonna make is purity at the end of the day. Do people understand what purity really means and living within the acceptance of your singlehood? And when you understand and having that security, and I'll throw this in, having your security in God and learning how to apply, the words and the wisdom of God into your personal life and within yourself, then you can avoid these triggers. You can avoid responding in a certain ways because you're finding this healing through having a relationship with God. And that's where I've found my security personally. And when things have came up, or when they do come up, I don't initially respond the way that I used to. And the way that I used to would literally would be maybe get indifferent, maybe just give a crazy attitude. I sometimes I would get angry. It wouldn't be my initial emotion to go to, but when I found this oneness with God, just because He is love
Yeah.
at the end of the day. And responding with triggers and responding with these actions, it's just a representation of the lack of self love.
It's huge what you just said,
Yeah.
the lack of self-love.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't realize that when you truly love yourself and you love yourself through him,
Hmm.
you don't have a lot of that stuff. And you're not angry a lot of times.
Exactly.
Your anger
Right.
goes away.
Hmm.
You're not as snappy.
Yeah.
How long did it take you to get to that point?
Mm, I really started going on a deep dive, like, and really taking captive of these emotions and these thoughts as with maybe within the past 2 3 years.
You
And I personally had a relationship with God and made that decision 6 years now. So it took me a couple years to get out that childness and behavior, but then stepping into adulthood, I was around maybe like 23. And there's a scripture that says that the spirit gives you love and self-control and power. And when you live within the spirit of God and when you're walking in step with him, he literally takes upon the burdens and the weariness, and there's scripture that says that he makes your burdens light. It
How is he more what's the word I want to use than Tom and I over here?
Biblical,
Well, and
literate.
not well, no, not even biblical
Literate.
literate. Like you're more you're just more confident in your stance. Like you're just very like this is how it is.
mm,
Is it harder to date because of that?
it I stay within the proximity of the church when I start to have an
Mm.
interest in
Okay.
dating. And so with my past experiences of starting to build with the girls, starting to get to know them in the church, it's a safe place. It's a safe
Yeah,
haven. And
yeah.
so there
Sounds like it.
even though everybody is coming into the kingdom of God with insecurities and everyone's coming as, with a
We
mess,
all have
and we all
insecurities,
have
no matter what
but
anybody
but
says.
the beautiful part about it is that we learn to understand what it really means to be pure. We really understand what it means to live within the fruit of the spirit: love, peace, kind, gentleness, patience. You learn the attributes and the character to be able to actually live as a holistic individual. Um,
So are you more willing to, if you met somebody or whoever,
mhm,
the girl you, let's say, are possibly dating,
mhm.
are you more willing to listen to her triggers and her traumas and her boundaries
Yeah,
because
for
of
sure.
where you stand and obviously your heart is at peace and
Mm,
forgiveness, right?
100%. And I'm just, I've had an experience of, building with a girl in the church and having to be able to be the listening ear, because what's happening is that if you respond or bring up things that are from her past, you being the stability and the calmness in that conversation, that is you bringing the representation and the reflection of God in the
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
conversation. And
Yeah.
so now she's not just looking at me, she's looking at God in our conversation. So she's like, okay, I'm seeing God within you. And so now I could find this. And I personally push back if she does decide to get triggered or emotional. I push her back into her relationship with God. I'm like,
Oh,
don't
yeah,
come to
yeah.
me
For an answer.
for an answer. You go to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been having great experiences, and like I said, I'm 26. I started making the decision when I was 19, and so I've never had these crazy experiences that I've heard,
Yeah.
but I think I have been able to grow in a substantial rate just because I've been able to, I personally would say I've made the best decision for my life to learning what it really means to learn the truth, and then it'll set you free.
And when people at your age and where you are right
Mhm.
now, when they share things with you, those aren't things that later in an argument you would ever dare to
Even have a conversation about.
throw back in their face, or
Mm,
because a lot of women, we've talked about it before, when you're being vulnerable or
Yeah.
open to them and you tell them things, and then later in a fight or thing, it's used against you. It's
yeah, because there's a difference between being transparent and being vulnerable. Transparency is that you can express something, but vulnerability is something, like you said, it could be used as a
weapon.
weapon.
Yeah. And that's what we had said before.
Mhm.
You said that when men finally open up, which what I've heard from a lot of people about this podcast is me and Trina and Gina interrupt you men and don't let you
Hmm.
guys
Wow. See,
Mhm.
But
somebody believes us.
but this is something that I personally learned. I won't continue to have the conversation if they decide to do that.
uh
I would rather walk away.
really?
Respectfully, we cannot have this conversation.
Yeah.
You can go ahead and pray about it. You can go and do what you need to do. Come back to me when you're ready to have a conversation.
Mm.
Where is that maturity?
That's
Like where
great.
yeah, like I
Perfect.
wish we were like
Yeah.
half the time me and Tom are like rah 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 rah.
Yeah, yeah.
No.
And I don't know if we necessarily go right to God in our moments of, so
Mhm.
maybe I have yet to master my emotions because I'm listening to you and
Mhm.
I'm like, yeah, I'm not there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm about 75% there.
Yeah. You walk away from Alina in the conversation, you might get hit in the back of the head or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
I was like, I thought I was pretty good with my emotions. Apparently, I'm not because he just educated the
Well,
both of us.
that happens a lot of times with guys. They'll just shut down. They're just not going to continue in the conversation,
Right.
or they're not going to bring conversations up because it's like they're not going to be heard, or they're
Heard
not
or
going to be
listened to,
So,
just
is
like
that
you
a
said.
trigger?
Absolutely.
Mm,
that you don't listen to me, or
Yeah.
you're not paying attention,
Yeah.
or you don't care what I said, or you
Yeah.
can't repeat what I said.
Yeah.
If I'm having a conversation with you and I'm
Mm-hmm.
trying to, share with you, and
mhm,
you don't even know what I just said,
Yeah.
mhm.
like, are you really listening? Are you
Exactly.
really trying to understand me?
Yeah.
Exactly.
You
Exactly.
know?
And I don't think that women realize, and I'm guilty, so believe
Yeah.
me, I'm not innocent, that sometimes we're like, okay, just like we're the women, you're supposed to be like, oh, it's okay, babe. Let me
The
wipe your tear, right?
reassurance. Yeah.
You guys are supposed to be our protectors, right?
Yeah.
So when a man does come to us and we're like, okay, let's just get through it because you're a man, you're gonna be strong. You just need to vent for a second,
Mhm.
vent it out, and then let it go.
And now shut up.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's
Now
and
shut
that
up and move on
yes,
right
that's
now.
like the honest to God truth where
Yeah.
women won't be honest and say that,
Yeah.
but a lot of women don't want to hear men. And realistically, a lot of us also go to our friends
Mhm.
because
It's an itching ear that your friends
yes.
will give you.
But then your woman would get mad if you couldn't go to her with these things.
Mhm.
Well, why can't you come to me to
Right.
tell me these things?
Right.
Why can you go somewhere else? I should be the one because you ain't even listening.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know,
and I don't
because
think
you
that,
don't listen when I
Yeah.
try to say, or you shoot it off, or you talk about whatever your feelings are towards it or whatever, and you're just shutting me out or defending your stance on whatever, and you're just thinking about your defense on your stance, and you're not like maybe really trying to understand why I think that way, why am I doing that, and then maybe if you did really take it all in, you'd be like, oh well,
But that is the hard part about being older, though, is because you're so fixated in a certain way of thinking, and you're not willing to understand and digest from a whole nother point of view. I think that's where the youth could come into play a little bit more, because we're not as stubborn.
you
we're
guys aren't even locked in your box.
locked in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still pliable and moldable.
Yeah.
Like,
But I would say even a lot of women, they take a hard stance now on, I guess, wanting to be stubborn, willing not to listen. I think it might have gotten worse,
yeah,
It
but you know what?
has.
They get like that, and
because
they
of
want to
social
be that
media.
way.
Yeah.
And I don't have to do that, and right.
Mhm.
Well, I don't have to be here either.
Mhm.
And
But-
then when you get like, whoa, wait a minute, like
Yeah.
like so.
At
take
his
it easy,
age,
like
I feel like at that age, and correct me if I'm wrong,
Mhm.
you're young. Like you said, you're going to mold each other into the relationship together, right?
yeah.
You don't have kids. You're not married. You're
Mhm.
dating her.
Mhm.
Now you're going through life, and you guys are molding and figuring it all out, right? So you take us at our age. If we're I guess in a relationship and we meet somebody and we're dating, and he does come to me and I do say like, well, I'm not this or I'm not that.
Mhm.
My first thing is, then why are you two together? If
Mhm.
you're already arguing, if you're already
Exactly.
fighting, we don't have that much longer. Like, yes, I could live another 40 years, but I'm 50.
Yeah.
My brain might stop working in 15 years, realistically,
Yeah.
My dementia runs in our family, so who knows? At this point, I don't want to argue with you. If that is a trigger, tell me it's a trigger, and we'll work through it.
Yeah.
What are your boundaries? I'll tell you if I can work with that or not, right?
Mhm.
To me, it seems
Yeah.
that simple. Like, don't come at me and say, well, I don't need to this and I don't need that. Well, then you don't, like he said, you don't need to be here. Go find somebody who you can do that with.
Yeah, people don't have to understand what healthy communication looks like,
Mm-hmm.
because there has been no example for that. There's always been the bickering, there's always been the fighting, there's always been the hollering. And I think for me personally, I haven't, like I said, I haven't had any of these experiences, but what I can say is that I would, mm, when it comes to the woman too, is that I won't have this. How can I say this? I trying to figure out how to perfectly say this, but either way, um, in within a relationship, I personally, and this is where the man kind of comes into play too, is that you have to be the stability in the both of you guys. Um, but at the same time, within that relationship, a man could come and be present one day and be like, "Hey, I got 20% this today," but is your spouse be willing to make up that 80%?
Well, we've talked about that,
Wow.
Tom. And I don't think a lot of women today, today's world, usually both people have to
Mhm.
work, right?
Mhm.
So both people have to take care of the house. Both people have to take care of the kids. And I don't know if today women realize,
Their role.
But what do you mean by you're not just talking about financial, you're not talking about that. You're
Mm-mm.
just talking about
Effort, emotions, the intent, the hard work, dedication to help unite the relationship. And I think the beautiful part about walking in step with God is because, and I think this is kind of the point I wanted to make, is that you guys can have your differences, right? But what synchronizes and what makes the relationship work is the Trinity within the two and God,
yeah.
is because God is actually the joint and creates the symphony
Mm.
within your guys'
But if
relationship.
you're dating
It's
somebody
the
who
mutual
you're
component
not,
in it.
what's the word, equally yoked,
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
then it doesn't fit with
It
what you're
doesn't
saying.
work.
no.
It doesn't work at all.
Well, it can work, but it's not going to work healthy. That's how I
Mhm.
look at it.
Mhm.
Meaning two people will stay together. They'll make it work,
Mhm.
but it's not going to be healthy.
Mhm.
You have to find somebody
You're looking at like you're not looking at the ideal He's talking about the ideal relationship. God in the center of it.
Mhm.
But all these people, we're talking about relationships that
Yeah.
have nothing to do with God in the middle of it,
Right.
and they're trying to create this harmonious relationship and this communication that is really going to be a struggle because they don't even have God. They don't even, he's not a big part of their everyday life, their communication, everything that they
Right.
do and say. We talked about, a lot of people like to, I'll sprinkle them in a little here and there.
Yeah.
I'll throw a couple little nice things. I'll add them to my day, but no, but is he the center of
Exactly.
yours? Right? We talked about that
Yeah.
a little bit earlier. So
Well, you said it best when I
That's
said, "Is
not-
God the center?" How did you explain it?
I don't know. You could see it as a pie or a pizza, right? You have all of your individual slices.
Let's make
And
it
so
pie.
people literally try to,
I like pie.
right?
Go
Me
with
too.
pie.
I like pumpkin pie. My mom makes the best pumpkin pies. Anyways, people try to create God as one of those slices in the pie or the pizza, but rather than cutting out the middle of it,
Right.
putting that God in the center, and then everything is worked around
Yes.
your relationship.
And
Yes.
the relationship should start like the way you're starting yours.
Mhm.
You're starting it with him being the center, where a
Exactly.
lot of us, start this relationship and then later on let's try to
Yes.
add this into the
And
relationship.
I've seen that too, but if you're willing to do that, you have to learn how to live separately first and learn your guys's like, hey, devote yourself into your relationship with God. I've seen it happen when people eventually come back together though. Once they figure themselves out in the relationship with God. Then if you guys want to work and molding it, putting it back together is because it's not your own individual feelings or even lust at the same time that is making the
But
attraction.
do you think it's easier with you being younger than compared to us being older because we've seen it, right? We've gone through the kids, we've gone through the fights, we've gone through the dirty down fighting, the dragging, the kids here, the kids there. Like, he's going through what he's going through right now, like what everything I've been through. It's harder now
Mhm.
to one find somebody who is equally yoked.
Right.
It's two to find somebody who has the mindset of like when you meet Tom, like Tom's the man. He doesn't have to say it. You know he's going to be the balance, the structure, right? Is she going to let go of her reins and
Mhm.
allow him to be that?
Mhm.
Is she going to say, okay, you lead, I'll follow?
Right.
Is she going to say, he doesn't like it like this, let me make sure that?
Yeah.
Or is it always going to be like, well, I don't have to do that because my ex did it like that and I didn't like that. Or I'm going to do this. Like, I think for us as we get older, it's harder. Like for me as a woman, it's harder to find a guy who has that strong structure balance who's gonna lead
Mhm.
because I'm a strong woman
Mhm.
and I've led and I've done all that. I know what my traumas are, I know what my triggers are, I know what my boundaries are, and I always say I lay out all the rules to the game.
Mhm.
And I will play all your rules, but the minute you break one of my rules,
Mhm.
you have to understand what's going to come with that.
Yeah.
And a lot of men can't, I'm speaking for the women,
Yeah.
they can't. Today a lot of men want the women to lead.
Mhm.
They want the women.
They do?
Yeah, Tom.
Mm. A
Wow.
lot of men like toxicity.
They
Well,
lo-
that yeah.
they
Love
love
the
that, but
toxic
they
Let the
also
women
financially
lead.
a lot of
Oh.
men would be willing to let a woman take care of them.
Mm.
And for
Mm.
me, like I hope and pray that my child either meets a woman and they build together or he's able to take care of her. Now, don't get me wrong, if he happens to meet the CEO of like a $2 billion company, right? And she's like, babe, stay home with the kids, that's different. But I hope that my son always holds the structure, the
Yeah.
stability,
Yeah.
and takes care of his household
Yeah.
because I see it more so now. Men, oh, I'll move into your house. I'm not, excuse me, what? No. Do you have a job? Like, not doing it.
Yeah.
I see and hear a lot of things, and I'm just not like, and that is a trigger for me. There'll never be a man laying on my couch while I'm at work.
Mm.
Didn't allow my kids to do it. I would never allow a man to do it.
Mhm.
Would you just be able to chill on
I couldn't.
some woman's
Neither could
couch while
I.
she's?
No.
Neither could I.
No. I mean, I would have a hard time for my woman to make more money than me.
Would you really?
Now, okay, but at the same time, if she
Well,
did,
that's
how
obviously
do
a
I?
trigger.
Well, no. How do you equalize your value to her? I think we talked about this before.
Right.
Okay, you make 190,000 a year. She makes 250. She makes more than you, right?
Yeah.
But you know how to add another bedroom on the house. You know how to put all remodel the kitchen. You know, now you just created value, and now your house is worth
Exactly.
another $50,000 this year because he just added,
Yeah.
you know, a room onto the house, or
Yeah.
he just whatever. So now he brought to that household, you know, just as much value as she did, but it was in a different way.
Yeah.
And I see it the same way as being like a lot of times. So now you got the guy, now he makes 190, but now this girl makes 100, right? But she knows how to nurture and to keep
Exactly.
that family harmonious and take care of the
Exactly.
children and take care of her man and lift her man up and support. And now she's equalized the value to be right at his 192. But a lot of them don't want to do that part. They don't want to, like, they're like, no, they're not
Yeah.
that team player. They're like, no, I'm not going to do all this. I don't want to do that. I
So
don't
I mean,
want.
would you be willing to invest into molding a woman into that?
It depends.
He would, for him to
So-
mold a woman, he'd have to date somebody way younger, right? Because
Well, with God and working in it, right? If she's open and she's willing, right?
Oh, yeah.
You could be
Yeah.
adapting. You could. So, yes, but
I
you
think
know,
we're kind of past that point too, though. That's what I'm saying.
well,
It's harder
it
for
just
us.
depends on how much things are you going to have to change in order to do it. Like if it's adjusting a
Compromises.
little bit,
Yeah.
you know, you can probably. But if it's like all this, I'm gonna, you know, flip this whole house upside
Pulling
down and
nails and teeth.
start it over, you know, and just tear the.
If you have to
freaking
tell her she
structure.
can't be at the bar anymore, she can't post those
Yeah, it
pictures
dep-
on social
Right,
media.
right.
She has to be home at a certain hour. It's at that point, I feel like you're being her dad. If you have to like, see, that's why I
Yeah.
say when kids are younger, when you date, you mold each other, right?
Yeah.
And marriages are supposed to last. And you
Yeah.
guys, at the point when you're at our age, you guys are together. You know how
I
each
think
other
you
works.
meet somebody. You don't meet somebody to break them all down and rebuild them. Now you meet somebody that you kind of have similarities already. You guys are, you know, you guys are like a fitting puzzle already.
Yeah,
You have
for
chemistry
sure.
already,
For sure.
and now there's a couple minor
Right,
adjustments
right,
here and
right.
there. You think you like,
Yes.
you know, similar things. You know, you do similar things, and then that, you know,
Mhm.
those would be lot less difficult to have to like break this whole thing down. You know,
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
think
like how much?
I think we triggered every woman in the audience with that word molding.
I'm
But
sure.
no, but
It's
I
like,
think
wow.
True, that's so
But
true.
I don't think it's a bad word, and I'm going to tell you
It's
why.
not a bad word if a man says molding is, but if you say a molding,
didn't- but we're
I'm
not
gonna
saying-
mold, like just you've
We're
said
not
it.
saying grooming. We're saying molding.
Yeah,
Well,
but you've said
yeah.
it before, like how Seth gets a woman and now he gets this new woman and she's going to want to mold him into
Yeah,
her way.
she
And it's okay
is.
for the woman to say it, but when a man says mold the
Yeah,
woman,
Oh yeah.
oh, just like you
yeah.
said, it's a trigger. They don't want to hear that
also
one.
is triggering not just molding, but being submissive.
Oh, they
Oh
like that.
yeah.
They don't like that one either.
No.
Well, let me say this here and now.
Uh-oh.
Hold on. That word, if I knew when I was 25
Mm-hmm.
what I know now, I'd be the most submissive woman God could have created. And the reason being is I've always paid my own rent. I've always paid my own mortgage. I've gotten 2 kids into school, right? I've worked my ass off. I've done all these things. And I've foot the bill. I worry about if a bill's going to get paid, if it's not, if my kids are going to eat, if they're not. So if at 25, I would know what I know now, and I knew that man was going to do all those worries, and all I had to do was
See,
cook and clean, like I would, because I don't, like, people think, oh, you're so independent. No, it's not a life I chose.
Well, it's easy to become submissive to a good man that's really looking out after your best interest. But it's
Yes.
hard to become submissive to a man that's an egos, you know,
That's a
asshole,
jerk, yes.
jerk, right?
And a lot of them
so
are.
That's what the first thing the woman think about. They think
Yes.
about that asshole,
Yeah.
and they're like, "Fuck no, I ain't gonna submit to this
Yes.
To
fucking
no
jerk."
man.
Yes.
Right? They're not thinking
Yes.
about that this guy makes good decisions for the whole family. He's gonna take care of her,
Yeah.
gonna, looking out for her best interests and stuff like that. So they're already, most of them are thinking about, hell no, I'm gonna not freaking
Well,
be submissive to that.
I look at friends and couples, and I have a friend who's married and been married to the same guy, same baby daddy, kids. They've gone through hell and back, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way she speaks about him and the way she looks at him, I'm like, she's very submissive, but her house is her house, meaning you don't walk in her house with those shoes on, because if my wife gets mad and you get her floor dirty, then I'm coming out. Like, he has her
Right. He
back,
gives
right?
her, yeah, that respect
Yes, like,
factor.
and I look at it and I think, but she don't work. She's never worked. She takes the kids shopping, they go eat. Like, she was smart at that age that this is my guy. We're gonna go to hell and back. I'm not leaving. I'm gonna do whatever he needs.
But so men are, most men, they're looking for peace in their life. They're not looking for this one,
Yeah, exactly.
like, bickering at him, nagging him back. Telling, I ain't putting up with this. Or, you don't talk to me like that. I'm not your,
Yeah.
What? So they're already like in this
So-
defiance, right? And so, if they can't just like, hey, calm down and hear me out, like, you're not bringing no peace to me. I know anybody that follows the Lord, right? We know right away. If you're not bringing peace in my life, guess what? He's telling me right now, you ain't the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you
You
think
know?
a lot of the women, though, that don't want to be submissive, that aren't submissive, that don't have the peace, and I feel like that kind of starts with them as kids with their dads. If they don't have dads, if their dads aren't
Sure.
around, and they just hear the mom or they
Sure.
see the stepdad in the fighting, they already don't know peace.
Yeah.
They don't understand peace, right?
Well,
So they grow up and they don't have that.
I was gonna say because when you say submissive, people and women, they think instantly I'm a slave to this.
They don't know what the
Right.
word means.
They think
Yeah.
like I have no say, so I got nothing. I can't do anything with myself or my life or things like that. But submissive is inquiring humility and having the humility to listen, to be able to get underneath. Um, Not too many women understand what it really means to get under the man. But I think also the Bible says that the women are wisdom. And so I personally can't dismiss what she sees and what she feels is because God is working through her to help orchestrate the
Yes.
household. And so do I have the humility to also listen to her, take her advice, but be a man to still make the final
Final
decision?
Sure,
decision.
because now
Yes.
you'd have a well-rounded decision because now you have her input and yours together, so now you could see it a lot
It's two
clearer
minds.
from a better.
What
Sure.
did you see the movie 300?
Yeah.
Where he asks her all the time for her
Uh-huh.
advice,
Yeah.
and people don't believe that she was very submissive, but she knew what he needed. And sometimes,
Yeah.
what do they say? Behind every strong man
Is
is
a strong woman.
yes, and I believe that, and I agree with you. The word submissive doesn't mean when I walk in you're just kneeling down and praising me.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Right.
not. I think what it is even at the end of the conversation, if you don't like how we're going to spend the $5,000 on the house, I still have to make that decision because I'm leading us as the man. And this is what we're going to do.
For sure.
And if I fail and we're wrong, you have to be there and support me. You can't just say, oh, well, you were wrong. See, so now I'm leaving. Like, that's the whole being submissive is you do have an opinion. It doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to go
Yeah.
your way.
And then a woman can do that, but even on the man's aspect, how much are you living within your ego? Like,
Mm.
have you come into terms on what you portray and what your image and how strong you think you are? Or have you had that ego death? Have you learned to detach yourself from what you've already learned to portray, your perspective about yourself? Have you rid yourself and detach yourself and to really find your divinity and your humanity? And
I don't know if
finding-
men can do that. Like, because men are usually, it's all ego and pride,
Mhm.
right? It's
Mhm.
really
Wow.
hard to be in a relationship and the Bible
think we
specifically
can.
says there's no
Yeah.
pride and ego in love.
Mhm,
Like, if you're wrong, you're wrong. It doesn't matter if you're the man or the woman. Like,
for sure.
when you're in a relationship, especially when God is in the center of that, there should be no pride or ego.
Right.
But I don't know if men can let go of that pride and ego. I think when you're really in love,
You
I think they
can.
can.
Yeah.
You can.
I would
but
say
it has to be for that one girl that is your girl.
No,
right?
but you have to figure
in
that out
general.
even before, in general, before
Yeah.
she even comes into
Yeah.
the midst. And you can never get rid of your ego, though. But is it dictating your actions?
Mhm.
Are you allowing that to be the compass on what you're doing and how you're thinking, how you're
But a
feeling.
lot of women can come into a man's life and he is full of ego, pride, and everything else. And that one woman
Mm-hmm.
will break him that fast. And
That's so
in,
true.
in a positive way, not in a bad way, meaning he'll drop his
Well,
ego, he'll
you
drop his
can
pride.
finally
He'll,
see where you've made that mistake. Like
Mm-hmm.
for me, that my whole separation was part that. Like the the devil uses his three favorite tools, right? Is pride, right? So it's
mm-hmm.
ego, right? The lust of the flesh and the love of money, right?
Yeah.
So with me, yeah, I let my ego get in the middle of it, and then later on saw it for what it was like. Oh, that sucker! And, didn't really see it coming at the time that he was
Yeah.
slick and working his way into me, but he had me all pumped up, and I let my ego get in and admit it. But at least I seen it for what it was worth and recognized it, and now just like he says, now I can be more humble. I could, that I don't let the ego take control because
Mm-hmm.
now I
When you
I've
realize that
learned.
that's what it was, and it was like kind of a slap in the face,
Yeah.
did you have to come to terms within yourself and forgive yourself?
Mm-hmm.
I
And
probably, to tell you the truth, I don't know that I've forgiven myself, and I
Mm-hmm.
that's a real
That's
touchy
honest.
one for me to
That's
learn
honest.
how to forgive myself because the Bible talks about, hey, there's we reap what we sow.
Yeah.
There's consequences for our actions. So these are things that, hey, this is part of the deal, and so it's really difficult for me to let it go for myself because then I think, man, look what you caused, and then you just see the ripple of the
Yeah.
destruction down,
Yeah.
and you're just
100%.
looked at that, and it's like,
Yeah.
fudge,
yeah,
how do I just like, okay, well, it's fine, Tom, like. It's not fine. Look at what everybody else is hurting. You're watching all this other devastation. It's not just you. Like,
Yeah.
and you're just like, pick up the pieces, and then you're these other people that you've hurt and everything like that.
yeah,
Just like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, he's acting like it was nothing tomorrow.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
You
because
know?
everything is permissible but not beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Because everything is pretty much allowed. You have your freedom of will to make these decisions, but do people are they really conscious of the decisions that they're actually making and the effect?
I don't
I
think
don't think
when
a lot.
people
No,
when
they're
they're in
not.
that moment, with your ego, your pride, your anger, your emotion, everything, people just react and just do, and not until
The
later
anger and
do
everything else.
when that subsides, right? When everything
Settles.
when you separate from the person that you're having these emotions with, right? What happens? Your emotions start to calm down, you
Mhm.
start to think more realistic, you realize it, and then you go, "Oh shit,
Yeah,
I should have done this or said
yeah.
this." And the other person, whether it's the husband or the wife, is like, "No, it's too late for that. Like
Mhm.
you said this, you did this, and now you have to deal with the
Yeah.
consequences of what it is."
And then just hopefully you grow from that in your
Yeah.
next relationships and
Yeah.
when you see it coming. You know,
But in the relationships that you've walked away from, whoever it may be, they don't realize that that person that's walking away because they can't take it anymore, that person now has boundaries they're going to have to place on the next person.
Mhm.
They're going to have to heal. They're going to have triggers, and if they don't take that time to even forgive that person and themselves,
yeah.
you're just going to take all that into the next relationship, and it's not going to be any better.
Mhm. For sure. I always think about like you can always forgive, but you can never forget.
It's hard because you're supposed to, and I feel like you shouldn't forget because forgetting reminds you to all like for me, I forgave the monster under my bed. That's what I call it, right? But I will never forget because if I forget, then I don't place boundaries with my kids. My kids were never allowed to spend the night anywhere when they were young.
Yeah.
Um, because I don't forget.
I don't think anybody said you're supposed to forget.
I know
I
people
think
that that say like,
I
"Oh,
think
you're
it's
supposed to
perfectly
forgive
Forgive
it.
and forget.
Yeah, forgive it,
Yeah.
forget
I
it.
don't think so.
Close that chapter." And
That's
I'm
how we
like,
experience things. We don't forget
yeah,
things.
I don't know if there's little things that you should forget because they're just little things. But
Right.
today, again, back to social media, everybody has something. I mean, I hear things on social media. I'm like, these people would have never survived in the 80s and 90s with us.
Mhm.
We couldn't cry with our friends about everything. Our friends would laugh at us. Everybody went through something. Everybody had something. You clicked with the friends that you felt more comfortable with, and you got through life.
Mhm.
Now, you just cry about it to everybody and anybody, and you have to hear it.
Yeah.
Mm. Well, thank you, Solomon, so much. Thank you for all your input. Thank you
Oh,
for
I'm happy to be here.
enlightening us tonight. I feel like I just got educated.
I did too.
I know. We were just sitting here like, wow, listening to you speak was great.
Yeah.
I just wish I would have probably heard
The
that years
wisdom
ago.
of the Lord.
Right? The
Yeah.
wisdom of the youth.
Very true.
Well, he's allowing himself to be used.
Yes. And continue to do so, please. Just don't end up like us at 50.
Come on, don't say that.
Yeah.
I'm not that bad.
Tom, we are lost. We are like we're like, Lord, did you forget about us way down here? We love you. I'm just teasing. Thank you guys so much for watching. We all have Instagram. Do you have TikTok or just Instagram?
I have an Instagram.
I know you have Instagram, but I don't know if you have TikTok. We have TikTok. Tom has dancing feet, happy feet. That's what I call them. Little dancing Tom over here. Thank you so much. Subscribe on YouTube. Please, please, please subscribe. We're getting closer and closer. Thank you all for watching.
Oh, wait, before you end, just put it out there. We're trying to hit how many subscribers?
1,000.
1,000 subscribers,
Where are we at
everybody.
right now?
9 something.
Light work.
9. Hold on, I got to tell you now. Hold on.
Yeah, we're putting that number out and
Yeah.
we
We need
need
to
those
know.
here.
Hold on. We are at 9.
Speaking into existence.
Oh, I believe me. 947.
Whoa, we're close.
All right.
We
Oh
are.
my
We are.
gosh.
And
we should
I'm-
have that by the end of this next podcast.
Let's
next
go.
Thursday.
Wow, that's a big
We need 53 more.
Yeah.
1,000
By
subscribers.
next weekend. So it airs Thursday. Then by the end of the weekend, we should be there.
Well, we're going to have him put it on all his stuff. I mean, he just educated us. He's going to educate everybody else on the internet right now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Solomon.
No problem.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.